Back in 2010, we had a program called the BWS-CW Transmitter Challenge, and somehow this thing has survived as a project, show and tell, all the way up to present day. So thanks to everyone for bringing your projects in to show and tell us about. I would ask that each of you plan to take about 5 minutes at most to talk about your project. And then those of you who are interested in more detail, please see the speakers after we finish, because this may take until midnight. And so we want to make sure everybody has a chance to talk. So without further ado, who wants to be first?
Lynn. That's 33 feet long worth of Yagis. You know, they extend off on both sides, you can't see. The tower, instead of being a winch erected 20-footer, is now about 35 feet, and it's a hand cranked up. And you say, well, it's not like the whole thing goes up in less than a minute and a half. It takes about 90 seconds to bring the antenna up. You don't like what's going on or the amplifiers aren't working, about 30 more seconds and it's back down again. It's a beautiful piece of hardware. Very, very, very nice to deal with. Our little encampment is the trailer has got all kinds of sunshades on the side of it, because I've got a 5,000 BTU air conditioner and it just can't handle the sun load those 90-degree days. But inside the trailer it has sort of grown and gotten more and more stuff. There's spectrum analyzers, signal generators, precision power, there's a DC power system, an AC power system, and all of that trash in there operates off of one 2,000 watt Honda. It's straining, but it's doing it. But down on the bottom, you can't quite see down here. For those of you who know Mark Canawati, the guy who has been doing the CubeSats for many years, he loaned me his amplifier.
Let me move that box so you can get in there.
Okay.
So I'm blocking part of your picture. Sorry about that.
Not serious. It's got a bunch of, anyway, not a big deal. Sitting on top of it is an ICOM 910, which is the actual exciter for the thing. But that amplifier will do 1.2 kilowatts. So it won't run off the Honda, to say the least. So yeah, there is another generator. I need to do what?
Press the left button.
The left one. Oh, I had gone to the end. That's the little 2 kW that's working its heart out for me. And that's just that's some more scene of inside. That's kind of the operating position. The ICOM receiver on the right is actually the receive side, and it feeds an SDR IQ that provides a pan adapter, and it also allows me to get down to, I can actually get down to about 10 hertz bandwidth on that when you're looking for waterfalls. The downside of this whole exercise, I got to the end? I think maybe that's all there is. Yeah, we killed one of them, is that I started to do echo testing on Wednesday this last week, and it's just not working. I know the amplifier works, I know the low noise amp works, I know the transfer relays work. There's multiple, the thing is a cluster of relays. It takes 3 relays to switch things in and out. You switch the receiver to a resistor to look at your noise figure. All of a sudden my noise goes up. I'm hemmed in on 3 sides by power lines. And I knew there was going to be kind of a problem, but I didn't realize, but it's such a great location. Secluded, my own little piece of turf, airport manager is just fine with all that. And I thought, yeah, okay, well, maybe we live through the power line. The power lines have got between 6 and 13 dB more noise than the sun. So when I'm looking at sun, I can't even see the sun. I've got so much noise. So I have a little sheep out here that if anybody wants to help me move this thing on Sunday, I'm going to try to negotiate a deal where to put it where else to put it on the airport. Like, there is another location that was successful the last time we did it, which was actually quite quiet, and hopefully it'll still be quiet. But I'm gonna try to do a relocation on Sunday. But if somebody would like to participate and give me some email addresses, we should be able to know by Saturday night whether or not it is or isn't possible to relocate this beast. It's actually not too big a deal. Everything's in a trailer, so just hook it up and drive it away. The antenna comes down. It took me less than 2 hours to put the whole thing together, so I think a team of 2 or 3 people would probably take it apart in 15 minutes. It actually comes apart with about 6 bolts, and then the pieces just all come apart. And I've got another trailer to move it on. I've also got a 30-foot long sailplane trailer. All we could do is just put all the pieces on the sailplane trailer and drag it out to the new site. So it's easy to do.
Still on the airport?
Still on the airport, I think. Airport manager's pretty tolerant, ex-Marine friend of mine, so I think he'll probably buy into the deal. Anybody wants to go play moon bounce, because the signals are there. I could see Europeans on Wednesday during the U.S. window. I could see what's called the RO, is the end of transmission, and it shows up as 2 parallel tracks in the noise. You could just see all kinds of people are making contracts, and I just could not make a QSO that would work. I just couldn't quite reach them, driving me crazy. Although I did get an email from one of the Europeans who actually could see me. So that I know I've got uplink power, I've got enough antenna gain, I just got too damn much noise to deal with right now.
You know what your
It's
ERP
gonna work. Pardon?
You know what your ERP is?
I can get very close to a kilowatt, probably put 600-700 watts into the antenna, and there's about 19 dB worth of gain. So it approaches 100 kW. That's it. Talk to you later.
I was involved was back in April. We had the CQW. We had the CQWPX for phone, and usually I just operate with my 450, and usually that's what I would do. But what I decided one night, that particular day, is to see what would happen if I tried to use the SDR play as the receiver, and have what I would do is I would actually jury rig 2 switches in line, one that would switch it over from the receiver to transmit, and the other switch would actually isolate the SDR play from the radio, because one switch by itself is only got about 40 dB of isolation. You need at least 80 dB to protect the SDR from getting blown up. So I did that, and it actually worked pretty well. So what I did was I went ahead and bought some of these, and this is what I soldered. It is it's a carrier operated relay. It actually operates up to 100 watts input, depending on what the capacitor is in line. It has a diode in line, which would actually switch the relay, and when a transmitter hits it, it would switch the receiver off and go right to the transmitter. Now there's a second relay output that you could route another signal through it, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm going to build a second one of these, and what would happen is I would take this, put it in line with the transmitter, put it in line with the 450 like this, and then on the other output I would put it in I would actually put it into another relay. And what happened is the power of this relay would trigger the other relay, and so when it's transmitting, this would actually switch. It would actually switch over to the receiver, switch over to the transmitter, and then it would short out the receiver input to make sure you got like 100 dB of isolation while the thing is transmitting. And by doing it this way, with these two set together within 2 boxes, I'd be able to set up a QRP operation using this is the transmitter and this is the receiver. That's all I'm going to say.
It's a BITX40. It's a kit you can get. It's actually put together by a guy named Ashar Farhan in India. It's about a $59 kit, but it's a 40-meter transceiver. I'll see if I can give you a little bit of the view of the innards here. It actually comes mostly assembled, so you don't even have to do a heck of a lot of soldering. Just really have to get the pins soldered to the potentiometers and the various other pieces to join some wires together. He just produces these boards. You provide the box. So I looked around to try to find a box. This was the best one I could find. It'll do about 5-7 watts out of the box using a 12-volt power supply. It does have a number of different hookups on the board that you can jump to. You can actually replace the power input to the power amp, these IRF 510. You can actually get it up to around 20 watts if you give it 24 volts of power. So it kind of comes as a QRP, gets into the sort of the mid-range, I guess, with a little more juice. So far, I've only made a couple of different QSOs with it, just two, I would say, and one of them only a half a mile away. So we do actually have a guy in our midst, Bill N2CQR, who actually is really tight with the guy who creates these things. He's got a blog, and he calls himself Solder Smoke and things online. So he knows a heck of a lot about these things, and he's been giving me a little hand on the side too. So so there is a lot of resource around, and I'm kind of educating myself as we go. But like I said, it's an interesting kit. It's my first foray into HF. My antenna that I'm using with this is just a simple dipole that I have strung up on my roof, so nothing too major there. But I don't know. I don't know if I'd recommend it as a first radio for anybody else, but I'm kind of the guy who likes to get my hands all dirty and, you know, kind of heat punctured from solder. So there it is. That's what I got.
So these aren't amateur radio, but they're at least something I soldered. So I was looking for projects to build with my kids. I have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old. And so far he knows which end of the soldering iron to hold. And if it smells like chicken, he's holding it wrong. So he does know those. But I came across in Make magazine plans to modify, you know, one of your old lantern flashlights and put an Arduino inside it and put some potentiometers on the side and a selector switch. If you turn it on here, it takes a moment to turn on. And this ring of LEDs here are RGB, and the Arduino just runs through its programs, and you can change its intensity and its speed, and it's just a fun thing for, you know, little kids to play with. You know, they go out and play flashlight tag and things like that, and who else has a flashlight that can make any color? So they've both really enjoyed that. And the other one, this just came as a kit. It's called the Useless Machine, and he just stares at this thing and loves it. And it has an on-off switch. You switch it to on, and all it does is turn itself back off. And inside it has a motor with a little limit switch, and it basically just switches the direction, the power on the motor to reverse it, and then turns itself off when it hits the limit switch. So it's a really simple circuit. It's a fun thing for kids to first learn, and they can draw this circuit out by hand and really understand some basic electronics without having to worry about doing resistors and all those types of things, just on off. So so those are my two projects.
1976, I was stationed in the Philippines and very fortunate to be one of the first 5 licensed after World War II. We finally signed a reciprocal agreement with the Filipinos. I knew it was coming, so 3 months before I bought the Heathkit HW8. Now, those of you, I see a lot of gray hair here. I know a lot of you out there have built Heathkits. This is one of the nicest Heathkits they made. I've still got the book, check by check by check. And this is a transceiver, 4-band. They said 5 watts. It puts out about 3.8 watts CW. Single conversion, but a very, very hot receiver. So I used this until one weekend I flew to Japan and bought the Kenwood TS820S, and it kind of went in the closet. Then in 1978 I got stationed in Beirut, Lebanon during the war, and I didn't think I was going to get a license, but I took this with me anyway, and I kept the Kenwood in storage. Sure enough, I got licensed in Beirut as OD5MX, and I used this for probably a couple of months until a friend of mine mailed me an FT7 from Tokyo. But guys, it's really something to have a call sign that starts with OD5, and you're on CW, and there's only 2 CW operators in the whole country, and I'm running a pileup with 3.8 watts. It's unbelievable. So anyway, in 1979, when I came home, I sold this to Tony Lutkus, KA4NAP, he's one of our club members, and I just kind of forgot about it. And in 2015, for Christmas, I gave Tony a Transoceanic Royal 7000 for Christmas, because I already had one, so now I gave him one. He comes over on Christmas morning and gives me my radio back. It's unbelievable. The only problem was that the case needed some work. So I took the case down, and this is a garage paint job. I tried to match it as close to Heathkit green as I could. I got the color off of eBay, and it turned out not too bad. What I use with this is an 8 amp hour battery. These are World War II bomber headphones with the nice, they're 4,000 ohms, guys. That's what this thing requires. 4,000 ohm, very sensitive and very easy on the ears. I mean, you can have these on for hours. So if you see World War II movies, this is what they're wearing. And they always had the disconnect, so you could walk around, and then when you came back to your position, you jacked back in. And the key that I use is a Thigh Master for sending Morris. So you can see me sitting out in Bull Run Park with a dipole in the tree running this. Everybody wonders what you're up to. If you find one of these at a ham fest, I recommend pick it up. They also had the HW7 before this, and then after this they came out with the HW9, which is fairly rare. So anyway, that's all I got, Ray.
Thank you. Okay, actually 2 projects here. This is, actually belongs this way up, feed through for a, here if you want the side, this view, and those in the, out there can see the back, stiff aluminum for stiffness and copper for conductivity, antenna feed through, lightning arresters here, it's contoured to fit the vinyl siding on Nancy's house. Some of you have already met Nancy. With that, this was leftover metal from the project where I tried out the bending on that first to make sure that would work. Then I tried the 5/8 inch D chassis punch to make sure it would go through both of them at once before I broke it in the middle of the main project. And after that was done, I added a permanent magnet to it. It's going to be held up against the vinyl siding from the outside and slid sideways until a compass can detect it inside, and you can then verify how high the center point is and how far over, so you can drill with AC power from the inside and be sure you're not going to be going through one of the major steps in the siding instead. So those are for that project. This one is a board that I'm wire wrapping. It goes on my old Altair 680B computer. First computer I ever had, raised it from a kit. And it's going to be used for reading EEPROMs from a Tektronix plug-in, digital multimeter plug-in, where the CPU is just going nuts. And I have downloads of what the prompts should say. This will let me read that and verify whether I need to get something that can burn the prompt to reprogram them, or whether I need to look elsewhere in the thing. With that, one of the ways of doing wire wrapping, you put the wire in here, slide it over the pin, squeeze that, and it spins to wrap the wire. pull it back and release. If your hand gets tired of that, this one will connect to compressed air. I also have a couple of electrically powered ones which I use. I haven't actually used this one in anger yet. And this, I discovered, you know you're going to make mistakes doing wire wraps. And I discovered that I could not find my old unwrapping tool, so I had to machine up one. Piece of drill rod turned down to a small enough diameter to go between the pins, center hole that just slides over the pins, and a backward step filed into it, so when I rotate it backwards it untwists the wire. And that's it.
Okay, actually, the NC183D, when I was a kid, this was the very first receiver I bought. So, I got this one on Craigslist, a little bit steep, it was about 200 bucks, but it's a helicopter pilot, Coast Guard helicopter pilot, who works at St. Elizabeth's now. And he put it up on Craigslist, and he told me he got this when he was in middle school. One of the neighbor ladies gave it to him as a gift. So I plugged it in, nothing burned, but it's not functioning right now. And I brought it in because that's Mike's, this is the actual visual aid for Mike's speech over here. Much lighter than that, this is what I brought in for my soldering project. This is a Soft Rock 2 light receiver, which I built. And I'm planning on using it as a pan adapter for my FTDX 3000. Soldering, no problem. The wire wrap stuff that Don just talked about, I use the pins, but I just solder to them. I don't need any fancy air tools. But, and those have a long history too. This thing's got a whole range of history behind it. Those pins I got when I was like 13 years old. One of my fellow hams up in Long Island at the radio club, his dad was a machinist, and he actually worked producing those pins, and I still have some left over. A little bit tarnished with rat urine from the shed, but I was able to find them, put them in here, and you can come up and take a look how I soldered to it. Not very pretty. The box itself too traveled around the world with me. I got it at Radio Shack in Sacramento in 1992, I think. Still had the original box. Yes, there was some mouse turds in it, but I got that out of the shed. The transformer, and I actually built a little 12-volt power supply in here. The transformer is probably from the 70s. It's actually made in Japan. Another Craigslist foray where I purchased an SB610 sideband adapter, and a 95-year-old gentleman was moving into a home, and his grandson was putting everything up for sale. It was a big box filled with wires and junk, and I says, he told me, hey, you want this box of stuff? Give me an offer. I said, all right, 20 bucks. So a lot of nice RG8U cable in there. I started digging down. I found a J38 key in there, a Lionel, original one, old tarnish with a broken base, polished it up beautiful. And this little transformer came out of there too. He had built a power supply with it, and it has this rectifier, which I should have brought with myself. It's like a folded, Don probably, I'm sure you know, he's seen these things before. But it's like a folded U-shaped piece of steel, and I think it's got germanium panels in it, and it's for a full wave diode arrangement. There's two diodes in there. It still works. I was going to use it in here, but I needed a bridge diode. So I rummaged through my childhood collection. I found a little bridge diode that I put in here. But now this thing, this little Soft Rock Light 2, it's a $21 for this receiver kit. It's available online. I'll have the website out set up over here. And then you can build it for 40 meters, 20 meters. They build transceivers. Really neat little website that sells these things. So you roll your own toroids, and I couldn't believe I actually got it done. And wonderful that there's a W5 station, which is linked on their website, that goes step by step building the thing. So if you want to do some surface mount technology, it's a great little receiver, 20 bucks. If you smoke it, oh well. But the other thing is everything works fine. It's got two outputs go to your sound card, and the little jack that goes to the IF output on your transceiver. And because they also make one, you know, at the IF frequencies. Mine is 9 kilohertz, or 9 megahertz rather. And I just need someone with the mental capacity that can figure out how to get the software apps to work with it. Soldering, no problem, but the software bamboozles me. But anyway, that's my speech. Feel free to take a look at it.
Right there, and you know, that's bigger than a pack of cigarettes. But it covers from 100 kilohertz to 2 gigahertz. It's a pretty neat thing to play with. And they have the SDR Play 1, that's what this is. And this HRO is selling this, I just checked, for $99. And they have the SDR 2, which is about $199. It's got, does some extra stuff. I don't know exactly what, but I know it's got more ports. But you have to use software, of course, with this. And I use HD SDR. There we are. And turn that down. So right now we're sitting at 7.056 megahertz, 40 meters. It's just a neat thing to play with. Now, I've tried to get HF signals in here before when I demonstrated a flex radio. You can't hear anything in this building. It's like a Faraday shield around this room. So we're not going to see anything on HF, and certainly not with this 19-inch whip antenna that I've got stuck to it. But if we want, the neat thing is, this is a fairly new laptop, but I'm using this on my son's laptop that he took to college 11 years ago. It's an XP laptop with 512K of RAM, and this works just fine. The only thing it can't do, the old laptop, it can't decode FM stereo broadcast. There's too much signal coming in. This is more powerful, it can do it. And I've also used it with this little piece of junk right here that I bought at Dayton for 50 bucks. It's just a very small notebook, and it runs a version of Windows 7. So I'm sitting down in a hotel room here a few weeks ago. I got the SDR Play. I've got this thing. I've got a set of headphones stuck into the antenna jack, and I'm listening to 40 meter CW, just copying, sitting in the room there. It's pretty neat. So if we want to, say, go up to, okay, so now we're sitting on 2 meters. It's just like that, nothing to it. And we can, I think, demonstrate, maybe. So we go to 146.52, maybe we can hear myself. Maybe. Test 1, 2. Well, I don't know if I heard myself or not. Let's turn it up. Test 1, 2. All right, well, I got something all screwed up, but it does work. It's an experimental station. It's not supposed to work. But anyway, it's a neat thing to play with. And I encourage you, if you want to get into SDR, that's the cheapest way to do it. It's a lot cheaper than a flex, and you can play with it. On CW, it's pretty neat because you get a signal in the passband, you hit CW zap, and it puts it right on frequency, and then you can zip down to, I forgot how narrow the filter is, but it's pretty darn narrow, and you don't hear anything else. And the neat thing is you can see the band. You can see up to 8 megahertz with this thing. So when you get your regular radio out, you're blind. This is a neat thing to play with. That's all I've got. Thanks. CW. Okay, not FM. And it doesn't work. So if we just go right up there to FM, and we turn the volume back up. Hit the squelch.
1, 2.
My adventure started with one of these little Chinese pixies. I'm sure probably everybody's built one of these. I had not. So I decided to go on eBay. You get 2 of these little kits QRP 40 meter crystal control transceiver, CW. 2 of them for like $8 shipped from China. How can you pass that up? So I bought one, started it up, put a 9-volt battery on it, hooked it up, put my key on it, heard some stations, calling CQ, went back to him and he came back. I fell out of the floor. It's amazing that something like that would work, you know, for a few bucks. So the next step is to figure out, well, how does this thing work? So I decided to take my second one and breadboard it, which I did separately, and break out the various stages, you know, from the power filter, the Colplox oscillator, the power amplifier, the low pass filter, audio section, just kind of breadboard it up just to kind of understand how this thing worked. And made a little key for it and started using it, making some contacts with it and thinking that's pretty cool, but still wasn't quite clear on how the thing worked. So the next thing you got to do is buy an oscilloscope. So a $3 kit turns into you know, several $100 with a digital oscilloscope. But that was pretty cool because then you can see the signals and kind of see how it works. So you go online, what else can you do with it? And you start searching around. And there's all kind of modifications you can do with these little kits. And one of them was add a side tone. It had no side tone. So found a little schematic for a side tone. It didn't work, so you start researching oscillators and came up with a little phase shift oscillator and started playing with that, and it didn't work. It took a couple of nights of fiddling with it with the oscilloscope and kind of learned how a phase shift oscillator works, hooked it up, and now it's got a little side tone to it. So all that's pretty cool. Bought a set of crystals, so I got 4 different frequencies I can play with. Then I thought, well, you want to have a variable VFO or something with it. So the next thing, you go out and you buy an Arduino and a digital synthesizer. So that's the next phase I'm working on right now, is to set up a little digital VFO to replace the crystal controlled oscillator. So hopefully I'll have a variable VFO on there. So yeah, so you know, $7 from China. Next thing you have an oscilloscope. So I highly recommend it. It's a good project. Yeah.
So, I live in a first floor condo in Reston, and I'm antenna restricted, and most of my antennas are vertical. So, our previous club member and good friend of ours, Craig N0CSM, made this 3D printed piece here in the middle, and with no solder and just a couple of screws and some wire, I made a 10-meter dipole so I could get on your net on Thursday nights, but my radio's dead. So the antenna does work. Trimmed it and tuned it with an antenna tuner, and like I said, by far the most exotic thing up here, and it works.
It's
So
okay,
that's what I
because
got.
our net is really boring.
It is pretty darn boring, I would agree.
Yeah, they can really. Oh, I brought some slides to show my project, which is one of these. It's a National NC183D, and it's one of my favorite of all radios. And I call it the Golden Age, which one of my longtime Elmers, now gone, said, described the 1950s with all the World War II surplus, all the new hams. Anyway, so this was from the Golden Age. And so next slide, please. This is an ARL handbook advertisement for the thing. It was very costly back in the 50s. Very costly. That was a lot of money way back when. And it had all kinds of great features, including 17 tubes. This thing will really get hot. And a lot of people took the bottom plates off of their radios like this to provide more cooling. And the ancients would lift this up and put a pencil here to allow hot air to escape from the top. Next slide, please. This is more description. This was the top of the line for National. National was a great maker of receivers. They had been since the 30s. The HRO60 is almost just like this. How many people know what the HRO60 is? Looks like? Well, it's almost the same radio electrically, except it has plug-in coils on the front. Anyway, it was a second improvement of a post-war new design radio for National. That was general coverage from the low end of AM broadcast band up to 6 meters. Had a calibrated band spread. That's what they used to call it. The word band spread has disappeared from our amateur radio lingo now, but it was important back in the 50s. Double conversion, which was kind of a neat thing. That's what the D meant in this radio's title. 17 tubes, crystal filter, noise limiter, really something. I got this one at a little radio store in North Baltimore. It was on consignment, and the store told me it had a bad power transformer, and you can't get those, unobtainium. You could have it rewound, but it would be way beyond the cost of a better radio. Anyway, so I made an offer, and eventually I bought the radio for $35, and they were glad to have it out of the shop. I can tell you that. You can see how much shelf space it takes. Anyway, so what I did is I replaced the power transformer with something out of an old TV. Had to re-engineer it. Next slide, please. The thing looked like this, which is almost exactly the way this one looks. It's not bad. She's getting on towards 70 years old. And this is the way old ladies look at 70 years old. Except for present company, if any. But a lot of them anyway. So, and it was just caked with dirt on the inside. Just caked with dirt. Next slide. This is the way she looks now with the new paint job. And all the knobs cleaned up, and all the dials and everything all cleaned up. Inside's all clean. Looks just gorgeous. Next slide. Now, to make it work better than it did, and I don't recommend this, Dennis. This is a labor of love, and takes a lot of love to do this. This looked so simple, this article. Very straightforward, very detailed. Let me tell you, I'm lost in the woods now. But I think I'm almost all the way through. The author has helped me. Anyway, I have made these repairs, these modifications, mostly done. The receiver's working well. I'm anxious to put it back together and get it on the air. Next slide. This is where the solder something comes into play. It has a central bed. This is looking underneath the radio. This is, if you're standing in front of it and looking down into the bottom, this is what the left side looks like, with many new capacitors, mostly new resistors. How'd you like to replace all the resistors in one of these pups? It's a lot of work. And other components over here on this side, not quite done. The power supply section, I have to put another choke in over here, and so I've still got work to do on this pup. You'll probably never see the inside of it. This is your only chance, your only look. And I hope not to see the inside of it ever again once I get done. Next slide. Well, that's it. That's it. I'll be glad to talk questions. Now I'd like to thank all of the presenters who came up here and brought their stuff, especially Dennis, and just heart attack bringing this thing. If you don't believe me, come and lift it inside.
There's a hand truck, right?
Yeah. Anyway, But thanks all of you for bringing your projects and showing them to us. Be sure, everyone, to work on something for next year. We'll do this again next year, I hope. And those of you who aren't finished with these things, bring them back. Those of you who are about to make new projects, bring them in.